Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's guest is Racheal Cook, founder of the CEO Collective, host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast, and business coach who works with small business owner clients to solve the problems of entrepreneurial poverty. Poverty of money, poverty of time, and poverty of energy. Is that resonating with anyone? Racheal cuts an incredible swath through many important business development topics in this chat, including niching, performing market research, managing your time and mental energy, and more. Tons of actionable takeaways from this episode so you can quit spinning your wheels and start making moves. Our show's sponsor is Primal Health Coach Institute, an NBHWC-approved health coaching school. This means that our graduates can qualify to sit for the national board exam to become a board-certified health coach. You can learn more about our Master Coach certification track at primalhealthcoach.com/mastercoach. While you're on our website, navigate over to primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro and learn all about the Done For You 12-week app-based health coaching program we've put together so that certified health coaches can hit the ground running with an effective and transformational health coaching program right out of the gate. Because we know that developing program materials and sourcing client management software are two of the most show-stopping, daunting hurdles in new coaches getting started. We made Primal Pro for you. Check it out at primalhealthcoach.com/primalpro. While you're listening, make sure to screen grab your podcast player and tag us in your Instagram stories at Health Coach Radio. And as always, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of our pod can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. This is an inspiring episode that will get you revved up to start making intentional moves in your business. So without further delay, please welcome our guest, Racheal Cook.
Hello, Racheal Cook. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive into our conversation today.
Well, we love talking to fellow coaches from all walks of the coaching life, right? And you work with a lot of health coaches and folks that work in the health and wellness sphere. So we're excited to pick your brain. So let's start a little bit by just finding out a little bit more about Racheal, a little bit of your origin story, 5 minutes or so of kind of how you got here.
How I got here is, like most of us, kind of a long and winding path that was not necessarily planned. So I finished my undergraduate and my graduate degree, both in business and entrepreneurship. And like most MBAs, I got recruited into the consulting world, which is where I feel like a lot of high achieving, go-getting type A personalities find themselves. But if you know anything about the traditional business consulting world, you know that it is a grind. It is 80-hour weeks. It is living in your car and not spending much time doing anything else other than working. And that's kind of the way it goes for most beginning consultants. But after a couple years in that space, I found myself running into all of these health challenges that I didn't understand. And I got to the point where I had 10 panic attacks in 10 weeks.
Oh,
that
boy.
was the most terrifying summer of my life because I'm driving up and down I-95 between DC and Atlanta, going to see clients on site. And I was afraid I was going to get into a car accident. So I took a medical leave of absence for 3 months. I was great that I had a mentor in the company who was like, you really need to go figure out your health situation here because you're too young to be feeling like this. And I was, 25, 26. And so I ended up taking those 3 months and every doctor I met just wanted to medicate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of fought against that. I was like, there's got to be something else going on here that I don't understand. And I didn't want to go back into basically the same environment, the same lifestyle, and just find myself constantly fighting this. So long story short, I ended up on a yoga mat and became amazing friends with my yoga teacher. And she said to me, as my time for this medical leave was coming up, she was like, you've done so much personal work. You've been working with a life coach and a health coach and a holistic healthcare functional medicine doctor, and you're doing yoga every single day. I don't think you actually want to go back to that traditional world. But I've only had this yoga studio for about a year and I'm kind of struggling. Do you think you could help me out? And so she literally handed me my original business name, the Yogipreneur, which is technically still the name of my LLC. And I started working with yoga businesses. I started going into yoga studios and helping them understand like how they can make their studio more profitable or how they can make their yoga business more profitable. So that was 2007, 2008. Fast forward, and if you know a yoga teacher, they're always a yoga teacher and a life coach, a yoga teacher and a health coach, a yoga teacher and a nutritionist. Yoga teachers are famous for collecting all of the different certifications and just like continuing this whole health journey, or spiritual journey, or whatever angle it's going. So over the past 14, 15 years now, I've just continued to pay attention to where my clients were. And now I work with holistic healthcare providers. I work with nutritionists. I work with therapists. I work with coaches of any type of coach you can imagine. I mean, everything from parenting coaches to divorce coaches. And it has been the most incredible journey to help these, for me, mostly women that I work with, to help them design businesses where they love what they do. They're obsessed with what they do. They love their clients, but they're able to build their business in a way that allows them to live a life instead of having to grind it out 24/7 to keep the lights on.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I really do love that. I enjoy hearing from business coaches that are pushing back against hustle culture, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Hustle culture is not the way to go. And I'm really trying to shift that paradigm, because not only is it causing this huge mental health crisis, but it's just not a paradigm that works for so many of us anymore.
Right.
It doesn't fit what most of us actually need in order to live an incredible life where we have time for our family, where we have time for taking care of our physical and mental and emotional health, where we have time for real relationships. So I'm really pushing against that.
I do like that. It's so wild and interesting to, Laura and I have been in the health coaching space as educators for a long time, probably pretty early adopters. And so watching the business coaching space grow as the health coaching space is growing, and the message around crushing, hustling, slaying being so pervasive, which is fine for some people. But it's almost like that narrative has completely overwhelmed any other potential options. It's like it's only hustling. There's no other option. And I that's not for everybody. The example is, why do we have to, what's this multiple six figures business? What if I just wanted a 5-figure income that gave me the time and energy to do the things I wanted to do? Like, that would be nice. That would be fine. Right. I think it's, and then what I think happens is that health coaches feel like they have to now buy into this. Like, if I'm not scaling to 6 figures, I'm behind. So I'm again, I think we're speaking the same language here. It's like, this is a pervasive message. You don't have to drive yourself into the ground to achieve these benchmarks that might not be even aligned with your core values.
Absolutely. And I also, I do not believe that income is tied to how much you work. And my business is such a great example of that. I've only worked 25 hours a week, and I've done that for the entire time I've run this business. And part of that was because coming into this business, I had to prioritize my health and my wellness so much. And anyone who's gone through that burnout recovery journey, that you just don't have the physical bandwidth to put in 12-hour days. So up front, I knew I had to limit how much time I was working for my own physical well-being, but that hasn't limited my income potential. Right. And I think that's something that a lot of health coaches and really anyone who's in the holistic health field can challenge themselves with, because I think there's this thought that you can only make a certain amount based on how much you work. It's just not true. It's really about where are you positioning yourself and how important is the problem that you solve to your potential clients.
Exactly.
Because if it is important enough, then they are going to pay for the solution. And if you can design the business in a way that allows you to deliver that solution without it always being tied to your personal time, then your income potential isn't limited by how many hours you have to work.
I love that. So, and I want to dig into that because I think one of the massive changes in mindset we've seen coming out of this pandemic over the last 2 years from people is exactly this. So first of all, from the standpoint of jobs, we need more workers. Okay. So employees, people seeking employment, are in a unique position today, more so than any other time in history, in being able to negotiate for more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be more money. It can be more time. It can be more vacation time. It can be more flexible hours to be able to go back to work in a way that allows you to live more of the life you want to live. But we are now seeing, I think, in addition to this, from the standpoint of another aspect of what this pandemic has done is folks, I guess, valuing their own health, mental health, and the type of lifestyle they want to live. And they're like, why am I working like this for somebody else? I can run a home-based business. I can do something that allows me to live my life. And we have seen a tremendous uptick in the interest in people wanting to get into health coaching. We were really concerned when this whole thing hit that we would see interest die off because people are just panicked and they're more worried about other things. And quite the opposite. We've seen an interest actually increase. So what I would love from you, if you don't mind, is a little bit of a sneak peek from folks like, how do I actually do that? How do I grow a business that supports me without having to spend 60 to 70, 80 hours a week to get that going?
Yeah.
Do you have like a secret sauce or like a step-by-step kind of process that you recommend?
So I'm going to try to keep this really simple because it could be really complicated. I could tell you that we need to, build this whole ascension model and have a 47-step sales funnel and like all this complicated stuff. But I really believe in business basics, and I believe in keeping it as simple as possible because simplicity is where the ease is often at. And I'm always looking for what's the path of least resistance? What's the easiest way for me to get there without having to become some sort of like online technical wizard or have a huge team. So my first thought for most people is going to be, what is the true problem you are here to solve and who are you solving it for? I think what I often see, especially in the holistic health space, is we tend to get so hyped about what we have in our tool belt that we are like, well, I can help so many people. I can help this type of problem and this type of person. And the problem is when you are trying to talk to everyone, it feels like you're talking to no one. It is really hard to break through the noise. And when everyone and their mom is becoming a coach right now, you have to stand out in the marketplace. And the truth is, like, this is an industry that while it's new, it is growing very quickly. And the more you can niche down, the more easy it is going to be for you to break through into any space you're trying to get into. So I think getting into that niche first is the most important thing. And that niche can be complicated because I think some people believe that if you pick a niche, that means one, that that's the only thing that you can do. But two, that they tend to look at niche, I find, as very much a demographic type of situation. I only work with women ages 35 to 45 who are trying to lose weight, but they're struggling with, whatever. And I think we need to instead focus our niche on what is your way to work with people? What is your signature process that you're taking people through? What is your framework that you are working from? And that is such a different perspective for trying to figure out how you're going to support people. Because then instead of just being one of a million health coaches who maybe works with women who have PCOS and trying to get pregnant, you can say, I have this particular framework that I'm working from, and this is how I can help you. So I want people to fall in love with the problem they're solving and really start talking about that specific problem. And once you fall in love with that problem and you start talking to people about it, you will never run out of things to say. You will never run out of conversations to have. And you can go so much deeper into how you can solve that problem than you can if you're trying to help everybody in the world.
Hallelujah. Right, Erin?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting approach. I like it. You know, the niching exercises that sometimes we get into, I don't know, like I was thinking, as you were talking about it, you said getting into the niche is the most complicated thing, 100%. It stops people in their tracks. Like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to carve my niche or decide who they are.
Yeah.
And I've gone through the exercises where it's like, this is Heather. She's 5'8". She's 42 years old and has a son named Jimmy, and she drives a green Toyota. It's like getting into the weeds of this like avatar.
Yeah.
And you can literally spin your wheels doing exercises like that for a long time. But what you haven't come up with is like, but how do I solve this problem? What's the tangible thing that I'm then going to sell this person? So it sounds to me like you're talking about putting programming, maybe not before niching, or within it somehow.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's one, I am not a fan of any of those customer avatar worksheets or exercises. I think they are a huge waste of time, to be honest, because they make us assume so many things instead of get us in front of real, actual people and have real conversations.
Right.
And I think this is where a lot of business owners struggle, you know, especially if you are certified in whatever you're certified in, you've gone through all this training, you have all this experience, then you're over here at, like, let's say a level 10 expert on your subject matter, but your potential clients are not there. Right. They are nowhere near there. They're over here at like maybe level 1 or 2. And usually what happens, and this is why I think thinking about your niche in this way and thinking about your clients in this way is so important. If you're not talking to people about what they're struggling with and having deep conversations with them, it'll be so hard to find the right niche, because they're only ever going to give you surface level answers, right? Your assumptions about them are all you're marketing with. But if you go out there and, let's say, talk to 25 potential clients who might fit like the demographic profile of who you're trying to help, but then you start getting deeper and deeper and deeper with them about why do they need to solve this problem? What are the symptoms they're having? Do they understand those symptoms are not actually the problem? They're just symptoms. Most people don't. Most people don't. And I think this is where a lot of, especially in the health field, people get stuck in their marketing and in their trying to get in front of clients, is they know there's a deeper underlying problem, but their clients are thinking the symptoms are the problem.
Right.
And there's a huge education gap. So when you're coming up with your niche, it really is, to me, it's about talking to your potential clients, really going down and drilling down into, well, tell me more about that. Why is that an issue? Why do you want to solve this? What's actually going on here? What else is happening? If you're willing to go that deep with people, one, you'll find that those avatar worksheets are never going to even scratch the surface. But two, you're going to have so much more to talk about and be so much more clear in your messaging and in your marketing, so they understand why what you're talking about is relevant and important to them.
Right. Interesting.
So how does a coach going, through this exercise be able to articulate the problem without having the picture of someone in mind? What is that process like?
So you actually go out and find people so that you have a picture in mind. And this is part of where the startup stage of any business is just a little challenging. Sometimes I find that a lot of health coaches, especially, start this journey because of their own journey, their own personal health journey. So in that case, they've got a sample size of one of, experience they can pull from. But as you start to talk to and work with more people, your sample size increases, right? You have more perspectives on what's going on. This is where I start to get into research mode with people. And I actually, when I have conversations with people or I work with my clients to do this level of market and client research, we will record conversations and then analyze the conversations. We will literally put everything into a sheet and highlight passages that we're like, whoa, the way they're talking about this, we've heard 5 people use this specific language to talk about how they're feeling. That information can be so incredibly powerful. And that's nothing that you're going to get in a worksheet or an exercise, right? You can only get it from having real conversations. And this is something that if you were to go into more of a traditional, marketing agency, they're having conversations with people. They're running focus groups. If you have these types of conversations, you can have 25 people have one-to-one conversations with you. Let's say, talk to them for an hour, interviewing those potential clients. You will get more information than if you ran 10 different focus groups. You'll get so much clarity around what people are saying they're struggling with. And you'll see the connective tissue. You start to see the threads with how they're talking about the problems. You'll start to see bits of language that's going to be really, really helpful for you to describe those problems. And you'll have so much more insight when you are communicating about how you work and what you do. Because now, instead of a made up avatar of somebody who doesn't exist, you have a few people who you're very clear about. And you're like, how would Sue have thought about this? And that's such a huge shift. And as you continue to grow in your business and you work with more and more people, your clarity around who you're serving and what that niche actually is gets more and more refined. This is not a one-time process. This is something that's always happening. So, for example, in my business, in the CEO Collective, we sit down before every enrollment cycle and we're like, okay, who are the ideal clients for this? And someone who we had worked with previously, who might have been an ideal client, when we first opened the CEO Collective, that might have shifted a little bit. And we might say, oh, actually, these top 3 or 4 people, we want to attract more people like that. And we use the information we have from the conversations we've had, from the results they've gotten, to help us clarify that message and to help us kind of hone in even more on who that person is.
Okay. I love this. This is great. And I couldn't agree more that literally asking literal people what keeps them awake at night is the way to understand what keeps them awake at night. The question we always get, and I think maybe the log jam in this exercise, and I'm sure you hear it day in and day out, is, but where do I find them? I don't even have a following. I don't have an email list. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a following. Where do I find these people? Who am I reaching out to? What do you say to them?
Oh, this is such a great question. And this is another thing about being an entrepreneur. I feel like nobody really tells you. There's all this talk about, you just build an Instagram following, you find these, they're online. And I'm like, wow, let's go back to basics again. Who do you know? Let's start there. Right. So I have a client, Tammy, who is the 100% guilt-free self-care coach. And she decided to do what we call the 100 people conversation challenge. And she went out to talk to 100 women about the struggle they have with self-care. So she started by making a list of 100 women she knew, just in life, right? Who would kind of fit within, if we're looking at a bullseye, maybe not all of them are 100% the ideal client, but they were at least getting on the bullseye, right? If you're throwing darts, they're at least in the couple inner circles there. So she started telling people, hey, I'm looking to talk to this type of woman who is struggling with self-care. And as a result, she's feeling depleted and exhausted and is questioning, what her next step in her life is. And she emailed out to like 25 women that she knew. So these could be people who are former colleagues. These could be your college roommates. These could be the friends you have. These could be other, parents at your kids' school. You come up with a list of people you know and start with them. And then say, if this isn't you, do you know someone like this? And ask for them to start making introductions to you. And I think this is one of the easiest things we often overlook. A lot of times we don't want to reach out to people and tell them we're trying to figure something out or we're trying to get our business up and running. But honestly, the people who know you already, if they're not perfect clients, they might know people who are perfect clients.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, it's kind of like what is it? It's the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like,
right.
We know people, everybody knows people, especially if you're like 20 years old and you're straight out of college, you might have to ask for some help to get in front of those people. But if you're in your 30s or 40s or older, you probably know 100 to 250 people. If you will sit down and then think through who the top 25 are, who could potentially make those first introductions to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just thinking, it's so interesting because just a little anecdote. I just recently started another business, and it's not an online coaching business. It's a brick and mortar business, like selling widgets. Let's just whatever. And I find it so much easier to say, "Hey guys, I'm selling widgets now. Hey everybody, I'm selling widgets now. Tell everybody you know if they need widgets, I'm selling widgets." For some reason, when I went into health coaching, I was like, I didn't want to tell anybody, or there's this weird well, it's imposter syndrome kind of stuff. Probably coming from the fact that when you first get started with health coaching, which is kind of like intangible-ish, that nebulousness of like, well, who do I help and what problem do I solve? And I really haven't solved it for anybody yet. Like if I'm selling widgets, I just have to go buy the widgets and then sell them. It's just so, so there's that. I think that's just interesting how this new business I started, I was putting it up in my friends' faces. I don't know what that is with coaches or like heart-centered service-based type professionals.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you a question about that. Very, very tactical, specific question. When you're putting this out there to your network, do you incentivize it in any way, or do you just frame it like, hey, I'm creating a thing and I'd love your help. If you have an hour to get on the phone, like how do we actually verbalize this to people?
Yeah, I tend to not lean towards incentivizing it. Like, I'm going to give you an Amazon gift card or something, simply because we want people there for the right reason. And this kind of leans into, one of the secrets of business is truly your network is your net worth. And I think a lot of us have forgotten how to build networks and how to really have deep, meaningful connections with people. This is a skill that, especially in the age of social media, we've kind of lost quite a bit, and it's become super transactional, right? Like, I'll only do this for you if I'm getting something out of it. Mm-hmm. But if you commit to building a network for yourself, you commit to building real relationships for your business, you will find people are happy to help you. They're happy to make introductions. They're happy to open the door to opportunities you wouldn't know are even out there. So something that, especially early on, I think we all need to do in our business is make that a priority. And even if you're a super introvert, I promise you can do this, because I'm actually the most introverted, highly sensitive person on the planet. One simple thing I did when I started this business, I made it a priority every week to have a coffee date with somebody new. And I was constantly, this is of course pre-pandemic, right? This is right. Like 2009. But for years, Fridays at noon, I was having lunch or having coffee or having a Skype date with somebody new, just to get to know them, in their business. And you do that for a year, you meet 50 people in a year. You do that for 5 years, you meet 250 people. You do that for a decade, like you start to build this incredible network. Now, are all of those people going to become like your besties and they're just constantly like calling you with opportunities or making introductions to you? No, but some of them are. And some of those opportunities are going to blow your mind. I literally had a call yesterday. We're opening the doors for CEO Collective as we're recording this. And so I had a conversation with somebody who's just joined working with us. And she's like, oh yeah, my friend Katie told me I needed to talk to you. When I told her I was looking for somebody, she was like, go here. Well, I was on Katie's podcast 6 years ago. And we kind of have kept in touch ever since then. We've met up at conferences and had dinner together. We've, gone to each other's events here and there. And now this is somebody who's like sending me clients, and I'm the first person she thought of for this potential client. And it all started from, she also had a podcast talking to women entrepreneurs. We were on each other's shows, and then we became, business friends. And I think those are the things you have to start early on and then continue to nurture them. You continue the conversation, you continue showing up, you tell each other, hey, I'm going to this event. Are you going to this event? I'd love to see you there.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have, in the first year, it is harder because you're just getting started. You're just pushing that boulder up the hill, but over time, the momentum builds. And then you have, I can sit down at any point and send out 25 emails asking for introductions to potential clients, potential speaking opportunities, potential podcast interviews, because it's been such an intentional practice.
There's so much value in nurturing your network. And this holds true. I don't care what business you're in. Yeah. But it's especially true in this one, because again, like, building trust is such an important part of building any business. Once again, don't care what industry you're in, but an industry like this, where we're talking about health, where you're asking clients to entrust their health, entrust you with, in many cases, very private information that they don't share with a lot of people. Yeah. So a referral from someone that they know and trust is just that much more valuable to both them and you. And we've talked about in the past too, about the power of kind of, when you're just getting started, doing a bit of an inventory around who do you know, like who's within sort of your sphere of influence, and how to sort of reach out to those people. And I just think this approach, this kind of conversation, is much less invasive, rather than, hey, did I tell you I'm a health coach? Who do you know I can coach? Versus, hey, I want to make sure that whatever I bring to market is going to actually be impactful and effective for the people that I aim to serve. I trust you and your opinion.
That's
it
right
there.
I
ask you a few questions.
That's it. That is it. And you have to be willing to go to people and it's very vulnerable, right? Go in there. I'm creating this thing. I want your feedback. I want your insight. I want to ask you questions about your experience so that I can make sure I'm really talking your language. And you will find so many people are happy to help you. Yeah. And I'll also say, if you are in the health coaching world, I hope you are networking with other people in the health world. They don't all have to be health coaches, right? Because if you're just talking to a bunch of health coaches, y'all are going to spin yourself in circles. But for example, I had a personal trainer who I found through a referral from a friend. This was great during the pandemic because she came and trained us in the driveway, me and my husband. So that's how we continued when all the gyms were shut down. But through talking with her, she then introduced me to a great chiropractor who I absolutely loved, and then introduced me to a local health coach who I ended up working with. And then they end up working with me. And it's because she intentionally was putting herself out there, getting to know other holistic healthcare providers. And not only did it create this environment for lots of referrals, but when I showed up to that chiropractor, do you think I cared how much it cost to work with her? Absolutely not. I was like, hey, she told me to come see you. I trust her. I trust her opinion. I'm going to pay top dollar to work with you because I know you're going to help me out. When she sent me to the health coach and nutritionist, I was like, what's the 3-month package? 6-month package? Just give me whatever you have. And that is something that when you build that kind of network, you really are creating your own economy for your business, where you can as a coach, you just live your life, right? You're going out there prioritizing yourself, prioritizing your health, prioritizing your spirituality or your mental health. And you're talking about what you're doing and how you're helping people. Guess what? That energy starts to circulate.
Yeah.
100%.
I was thinking about this too. And this is just like a little thought I had rolling around in my head. So it's sort of like in the current economy where we're at now culturally, I feel like a lot of people are exploring entrepreneurship. It feels like more than ever. And you would probably know that more than anybody. But even in my circle of my closest circle of friends, I can think of 3 of them that have started their own gigs. One started a personal training studio in her home. One started a virtual assistant agency, and one is training spin instructors. So, you know, they know, and I'm a health coach, right? So the 4 of us have our little businesses. And maybe my friend Liz's virtual assistant business, which is growing like crazy, doesn't seem like a strong alignment. Like we're going to share clients, but we sure do. Like she runs into somebody in her virtual assistant agency or throughout her meetings. The conversation turns to health or something. Oh, my friend Erin's a health coach. Here, I should give you your contact information. When anybody I know is looking for help with running their stuff, it's like, oh, my friend Liz runs a virtual assistant agency. So even like completely non-adjacent industries.
Yep.
You know, if you look in your circle, your circle of friends, there's lots of people who are starting businesses, right? I've been at it longer than my friend Liz, for example. So maybe I have more contacts to send her way, whatever, it doesn't matter. But like, so this is going out to the new health coach, like get together with a circle of people that you know who are also new in something, whether it's adjacent to what you do or not, and just agree to kind of share the wealth, I guess.
Yes. This is, I believe so strongly in especially women entrepreneurs coming together and supporting one another, because you never know where those relationships are going to lead you. And you never know who you're going to run into that needs a completely unrelated problem that you don't touch. They're going to need that solved. And if you've built this network, you're going to be like, oh yeah, Nicole is the person I would send you to because she's great at X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And that makes you not an influencer in like the social media way, but someone with influence, with real influence, someone who people trust your recommendations. They trust that when they come to you, you're going to be that person who's going to be able to say, oh yeah, I know somebody, let me put you in contact with them. And this is something, okay, I'm going to just a little tiny Rach rant here. This is truly the secret that most people don't talk about. But if you look at who has reached the epitome of their careers, it's not what they know, it's who they know. Right? I think this is hustle and grind culture is very much based in this idea that we run in this meritocracy, that whoever works hardest is the one that profits the most. And that is not true. Because if that was true, then the hardest working person you know would be a millionaire. And chances are there's plenty of people who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And they are working a whole lot harder than the person who is actually the millionaire.
Oh, I could rant about this all day.
No.
Oh, yes.
It's who you know, and it's building those connections and actually having an interest in the humans in your world. And that's how we create our own economy. That's how we redefine, you don't have to hustle to grow a successful business, but you do have to have a genuine interest in the people that you are here to serve.
The other thing that does is it shrinks your world. It's not like I have to find everybody in the world who I could possibly work with. It's like, I'm just going to create this micro community and pull from within that. And that really brings down the pressure.
Which, by the way, the more tightly connected this little community is, creates its own little gravitational pull, right? And you're this little community of all the cool people in Erin's world, right? That creates a little bit of its own gravitational pull, and that other people from the community that are in it, first of all, want to protect it, but also are going to want it to grow, but in a way that's very much in line with that community, right? So they want to bring in the right kind of people that are going to be like-minded and actually contribute to that little community economy so that it continues to grow in a healthful way and it maintains its own integrity, because that's where, when trying to, I guess, just be too many things for too many people and trying to, I guess, contribute to the whole grand universe, things get perverted a little bit, and they don't stay true to that core. And so as you were talking just before, it reminded me of something we mentioned before we even recorded, which was this entrepreneurial poverty. When you were talking about some of the people that work the hardest are not necessarily, so that just triggered that reminder that I kind of want to go back to this concept, because it's something that you speak to a lot with business owners. So would you mind elaborating on what that means?
Sure.
And how to, I guess, how to emerge from it, I guess.
Yeah. So entrepreneurial poverty is something that I've become especially fascinated with women-owned businesses, because that's my wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. I started getting into this because I'll circle back to what happened. I was in DC at the US Chamber of Commerce, so the national level Chamber of Commerce. And I was speaking on stage about growing my business. And I happened to mention offhandedly, as you do, that I had newborn twins and was working 25 hours a week and was paying myself multiple six figures, not just earning my business multiple six figures. And I just kind of was like, yeah, this is my story, whatever. And I'm in this room. I mean, first of all, it's the US Chamber of Commerce. So there's like this massive American flag, and there's 200 women in the audience from all sorts of different businesses. And it took me 2 hours to leave that event. Wow. Because I had a trail of women who wanted to talk to me. I mean, they were following me into the restroom, asking me questions about how did I happen to make that work. And it hit me that, wow, most people aren't thinking the way that I was thinking about the way I structured my business. And then I got this research, because I went back and I said, okay, I need to understand what's going on. So I got into the research, and I found out that even though women are starting businesses at this incredible rate, especially, I mean, now more than ever, women of color are leading the charge. They are the demographic of women opening businesses at an incredible rate. 75% of women-owned businesses do not make more than $50,000 a year in gross revenue, which means by the time you pay your business expenses and your annual licenses and your fees and your taxes and all of that, maybe you bring home 30 grand. And they're still working 60 hours a week or more. So we're in this situation where it's like the old paradigm of business, which is all hustle, 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 grind, 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 all the hours. If you're not putting in, 60, 80, 100 hours a week, then you don't want it enough. Mm-hmm. It is actually creating this culture of businesses that are starting and failing very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, how can we shift this conversation? How can we get from only 12% of women having six-figure businesses to, like, can we expand that number a little bit so that they can not just start a business, but they can start a business that allows them to put their kids through college, that allows them to pay for, helping out their parents as they age, any of these other real goals that a lot of us have. So when I look at entrepreneurial poverty, I'm looking at three things. I'm looking at, yes, the financial side of it, because the numbers don't lie. Like, women make up 44% of small businesses, but only 4% of total revenue of small businesses. Isn't that mind-blowing?
Yeah.
So there's a very real financial poverty, but there's also the poverty of time when we're working this much and we're sacrificing often our health, our families, our self-care, our mental well-being, and there's energy. So this is something that I've been personally really drawn to, because I don't know if you guys talk about this much here, but there is a real burnout crisis happening.
Oh, yeah.
It's huge. And I think the old paradigm of business is just going to continue to perpetuate the cycle of entrepreneurial poverty. It's why 80% of small businesses close within 5 years, because they're not set up to be sustainable. They're not set up to actually allow the owner operator to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to flip that paradigm around. I want more business owners to come into the space and say, okay, what if I put some constraints on my business? One being, how many hours am I actually going to work? how many hours feels good to me? And instead of choosing 40 hours a week, because in 1925, somebody decided that's what we should work, based on the Industrial Revolution and people going into a factory, what if instead we actually said, what does my dream life look like? What do I want my daily schedule to look like? How do I define success for myself? And maybe it looks a little different than what we've all been told and conditioned to believe is the only way we can be successful. So I challenge people to think about this, to instead of thinking about this old paradigm of how we thought things should be, that a lot of us have bought into. We bought into it in the traditional, 9 to 5s. And a lot of entrepreneurs continue to perpetuate it because that's what they're told it takes in order to succeed. And what if instead we started with, well, what is my definition of success for my life, my lifestyle, my family, my friends, my health, my well-being, my personal spirituality, creativity, and my financial success? If I start there, what it actually does is gives you some constraints. And I love constraints because constraints help us solve the right problem.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really nice. It just sounds really nice. Not the poverty piece, but the way you help people kind of through it. I'm wondering, the question I have noodling around in my head is like, talk me through this idea of, is it ever too late? And what I mean by that is, let's say somebody's been in business for a few years and they've fully achieved all of the poverties, financial, time, and energy. They're on their way to burnout and think, I don't think I have the energy to add this to my plate even. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that, I think, and maybe this is a very niche question for people who are like, I need to fix this, but I actually don't even have time to fix it. I don't even have the energy or the money at this point to fix it. Do you know, like how, does that question make sense? Do you have a way to
does
do that?
Yeah. So usually this is where it's not about adding more to your plate. It's about stripping things away. It's about simplifying. Okay. So I'll give an example of this. I had a client who came to me and she was a yoga teacher in New York City, and she was doing incredibly well, had a multiple 6-figure private yoga business in New York City. She was seeing 25 clients a week. Wow. Now, if you can imagine being a private yoga teacher, seeing 25 clients a week, it is not 25 hours, right? We all know that does not include all the travel everywhere and, actual business administration and all of that. Well, we knew that in order to change her business up, first we had to create space. So when I look at a business like that, I'm looking for what is the lever we can pull that is going to give us the maximum return. So the easiest lever we had to pull was to change the way that she was being compensated for her work with her clients. So instead of having like, oh, I'm going to get paid for 1 hour at a time of private yoga, instead, we shifted that. So her clients now had to commit to, if they were going to be on her calendar, they had to commit for a certain length of time. So instead of selling 1 hour at a time, we had packages and we changed up the way that she was working. What that created for her in changing that, we were able to increase the price point a little bit. Mm-hmm. And if you increase your prices by 20%, you can also free up your schedule by 20% and make the same amount of money. Mm-hmm. So we not only freed up 20% of her schedule, because some people fell away, which is fine. We needed that to happen. We needed to make room for the new, but we freed up the bandwidth she had, where every week she was like trying to make sure her next week's calendar was filled and that the next person was going to pay her. Right. So we had the ultimate win-win. Her clients were committed to their practice, and she now had, because of their commitment, she had a baseline revenue that she could depend on. She knew that no matter what they did, with the right agreement in place and the right conditions in place, the right boundaries in place, especially around cancellations and no-shows and things like that, that she had an income she could depend on for a longer period of time. And that started to free up time for her to create what became a group program that she was able to then mentor other yoga teachers on how to thrive as a private yoga teacher. And so it was a year to go through that process. It didn't happen like in 1 week.
Right.
But suddenly, by increasing her rates 20%, freeing up her bandwidth 20%, that little bit of opening there allowed her to create the space she needed to then start turning the ship around. Because if you're trying to make these adjustments in your business, very few of us can just be like, let's burn it down and start over. Like, a lot of us have to kind of slowly make these changes because we're still trying to pay our bills, right?
Exactly. Well, that's what I was going to ask as a follow-up. It's sort of like when you coached her to help scale back maybe her client load by, changing the pricing structure, there must have been some discomfort there,
Oh, yeah.
Like if what if these people fall away, they don't like it, now I have to scrounge, now I'm scrounging. That could kickstart a little failure to launch for a lot of people. I think, like, that sounds too hard.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep spinning my wheels where I'm at.
This is we talk about this so much with our clients because pricing is one of the biggest levers you can pull.
Yeah.
And most of us are undercharging.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a study by FreshBooks that said women on average undercharge by 28% than men doing similar work. And that blew my mind, right? So it is a huge fear that, if you increase your rates, that all your clients are going to like mutiny and leave you.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you're good at what you do, let's first of all, baseline, be awesome at what you do, right? Be good at what you do. I can't help you very much if you're not good at what you do. I always have the assumption that you are awesome. And when you say you're going to get results for somebody, you actually are getting the results for them. So once most people get those results, price resistance goes down, trust goes up. So if you go back to your existing clients and say, hey, we're about to increase prices by 10, 20%, most of them are going to be like, got it, because they trust you and the results are worth it to them. The people who are price sensitive are probably going to be the ones who fall away, but chances are that's okay. Most of us aren't going to be like crying that not everybody is able to continue with you. And I think that's part of the journey of entrepreneurship that we've all just got to kind of come to terms with. Like, the people who started with you in year 1 are probably not going to be the same people who are with you in year 5 or year 10. And if you haven't changed your rates, if you haven't accounted for your continuing education, all the experience you've gotten, the types of results that you've gotten, like, we should be continuing to increase our rates because of those things every single year. I mean, it is expensive for us to stay at the top of our game in what we do. Like, just think about how much continuing education you have invested in. How many books have you read this year? How many conferences have you gone to? Like, that is you keeping the instrument in tune and on point. And we have to continuously be adjusting our rates up to account for that.
Yeah. I owned a CrossFit affiliate in Illinois, and we worked with a company for a little while from a business perspective. And that was their number one advice, is you've got to raise your rates. And they actually suggested, not only are you going to raise your rates, but you're going to whittle down your class schedule, because it makes no sense for you to keep the lights on and pay a trainer for a class that has 3 people in it. Doesn't make any sense. Right. But that kind of thing just psychologically is really hard. We chose our pricing based around kind of the other gyms in the area, right? You don't want to price yourself out of the gyms, but the coach there really pushed back on, do you really just want to be the same thing, just another flavor, or do you want to be able to stand firm in what you offer as a rationale for what you charge and why you charge it? And one of the biggest differentiators at our gym was that all the coaches there were owners at the moment, but this is what we did full time. We weren't doing something else and, hodgepodging this together that, we had, I shouldn't say that, not all the coaches, but we had 6 coaches and 3 of them were actual owners and we were doing this full time. And we're fully invested in this business rather than somebody who owns the box that actually has another job and then pays some coach $20 an hour to kind of come in and teach a class. That's a very big difference in the quality of the education. And I notice it from box to box. If I'm traveling and I go into a gym, I can tell who's training me at this point because I've got a practiced eye. And if somebody's just going to kind of come in and stand there like this and watch people work out rather than coming in and engaging with the class and encouraging you to keep going or correct something kind of in real time, that's what gives you, so what is it? The whole point being,
yeah,
I agree with you. The vast majority of people, men or women, particularly starting out, undercharge. Women in particular, I would agree with you there 100%. But I think to a certain degree, from the standpoint of going to business, that's kind of part of the process, right? Of really realizing your worth, but that transition from where you were when you started into charging more is really, really hard to do. So thank you for that and encouraging those coaches listening that are now at this point where they're like, I'm working my ass off and I'm not making enough. One lever, absolutely, and is the pricing, and it's probably a big one, and restructuring it.
Absolutely. And I will add on to what you just said there. Premium pricing indicates premium service.
Right.
So pricing is a very strong positioning.
Mm-hmm.
You can very quickly shift the type of client you're getting showing up for you when you're at the top end of the market. I would much rather compete as being the best and perceived as the highest value from somebody who's looking at me. I would much rather them look at what I'm doing and the price point I'm at and say, wow, they must really have a high level of service compared to somebody who's competing on being affordable. And there's nothing, I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong about being affordable. Like there's a lid for every pot. But if you are burned out and your business is not going to survive because you're not charging enough, you have to question like, okay, is being affordable actually the most important thing for me right now? Or is it making sure that the business is designed for sustainability?
Right.
And I think this, like you said, this is a journey that we all go on. It makes us all uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person. But when you get used to this and you understand what a powerful lever this is, then your mindset shifts and you're like, oh, you know what? Every year we actually do need to evaluate our pricing and make sure that we are in alignment with the value we are providing, the level of service we are providing to our clients.
So what advice do you have? Because this is a question that comes up, right? Like literally from all new coaches. What do you suggest I charge people? Which it's just such a big quagmire of a question because it depends, right? And so, I have my own view on how people should think through arriving at their pricing. But do you have some suggestions on as far as maybe a thought exercise or a tangible exercise people can use to kind of arrive at a price point?
So I've got something even better. I've got a calculator for you.
Ooh,
so
cool.
I have created this thing called the Get Paid Calculator. It is a spreadsheet that I got very nerdy with. So there's 3 parts to this calculator. It starts with 1, what is the personal salary that you want? And you go in and actually plug in like, what does it cost to live your life right now? So your regular living expenses, your insurances, your debt payments, your savings goals, all of that. And then where do you want to increase it in the next year, right? So what is your future goal? Salary increase next year? What kind of raise do you want to give yourself? And then it helps you come up with the revenue goal based off what you want to pay yourself. And then it breaks it down on the next stage where you can actually look at, well, what do the sales need to look like in order to hit that revenue goal? So I love that because then you can actually plug in and you can see very easily, well, I need this many clients paying me this much in order to achieve this revenue goal.
Nice.
And what I love about that is 1, it lets you know if a simple price increase is all you need. Because for some people, it might just be a 25% price increase, which in that case, it's just like, okay, get through the discomfort. Here's some emails to send. Here's how you announce it. And here's how you move people into the higher price rate. That's not too bad. But sometimes I get people who go in there and they're like, okay, even a 20-25% price increase is not going to make the difference. I actually need to radically overhaul my offer. Yeah. And if you're realizing that the price needs to be double or triple because you just really, really did not go through crunching the numbers, then you've got to reevaluate the offer as a whole. And this is where, circling back to the beginning of our conversation, it is much easier to have a premium level offer, whether that's a product, program, or service that solves a super specific niche problem. It is much easier to have a premium price tag for that than if it's very generic and vague. Right. People are going to pay more for super specific results.
Yeah. I was thinking of a couple of things as you were talking, and whenever we get into the conversation around raising prices, I always get a little itchy because it's like, I haven't done that in 8 years. but I had a client sign up with me last week, and this is actually the nudge I needed to do it, because we did the discovery call. I stated the price, and she said, "Oh,
yeah."
And I was like, "What do you mean? Oh, no." It was like, oh, that's yeah, okay, let's do it. It was just so easy. I was like, I don't know. For some reason, that little sound was like, wait a second. But the other thing I was thinking as you were talking is, okay, this goes back to burnout and how all this stuff kind of is layered, right? It's really hard to so it's sort of like, well, I could increase my prices, but I'm so burnt out right now. I don't really trust that I'm delivering a great product, right? So then it's like, well, there's the problem to solve. Right. Like, I don't feel right increasing my prices because I have such little mental bandwidth to really, really like deliver that higher ticket thing for my clients. Right. So, there's probably a lot of things to unpack there, but there's just so many problems to solve. I know that, that you've talked about, like, this is the full breadth of entrepreneurial poverty. It's like, I can't charge more because I don't have time, and I don't have time because I don't have energy, and I don't have energy because I have all these competing priorities and I'm spinning my wheels. It's sort of like, yes. All of those things need to be solved.
Right? Absolutely. And that's where it helps to get in a community of people who can help you identify what's the first one. Because I might make completely different recommendations to everybody, right? Depend on where they are. Sometimes the price increase instantly creates that bandwidth for you. Like I said, the one person who increased by 20%, cleared 20% of her calendar, that was the first place to go. Some people, I have literally told clients they need to take a month off. I have also told clients to hire somebody right away who eliminates like a solid 10 hours a week out of their workload. And it really depends on that particular business. Like, there is no one size fits all solution or process. So that's one I generally don't like Band-Aid in those types of ways. But I do think, because pricing is such a strong lever, that's what I would highly recommend going to grab this calculator, y'all. It's absolutely free. And when you get that clarity on the numbers, one, it removes some of the, I think we tend to get anxious about pricing because money in general makes a lot of us nervous. Yeah. But I love what you said, Erin, about you had the client on the phone and she's like, oh, no big deal. If you're getting that response, you are undercharging. Yep. If most people, like if you have 100% close rate of people that are having conversations with you, please go increase your price.
Right.
Yeah. That means that it's really, really, they're like, oh, this is a bargain. I don't want to be known as the bargain.
Exactly. And the reason why her response was so interesting to me is because, I invested in a coach last year and went through the discovery and got to the point where she stated the price and she stated it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to make this happen. Like, that was the energy with which I invested. It's like, yes, I'm doing this. I'm making this happen. Not like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Well, and let me layer onto that. There's a level of commitment that comes when the price is higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And health coaches especially see this. So I'm going to totally out myself here. I hired one health coach. So I go to a functional medicine doctor and it's a concierge practice. So on top of whatever it costs to go there, I have to pay an annual fee of like $3,000 just to go to this practice. And they gave me a health coach as a perk for one quarterly meeting, which sounds great in theory, but I'm going to be honest with you. After 6 months of this quarterly health coach, I have the same list on my refrigerator and I do like barely any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as committed. I hired another health coach outside of the practice, which the price tag is a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, when I pay that rate every month, I am like, oh yeah, you need to be on this because you are invested.
Yeah.
This is not just like a perk or a one-off that you're only talking to this person like once a quarter. I'm talking to her every week.
Yeah.
She's like tracking all my stuff. She's making me do blood work. Like I am so committed to this process with her, and pricing does that. So if you're underpricing and you're seeing your clients aren't getting results, they're not as committed to the process.
Yep.
This is something to think about. If you're seeing people just sign up and there's no questions asked, then, it might feel easier because there's no resistance there, but it might also be an indicator that you're undercharging.
Yeah.
If you are finding that your clients aren't following through or doing their work, they're not committed enough, right? And pricing is one way for them to commit.
Yeah. I 100% wholeheartedly agree with that exact point, as far as, because look, we see this all the time in our own community of brand new coaches that are getting out there and offering to coach people for free just to kind of get some practice, right? Because I'm somehow not really a health coach and somehow their time is worth less because they're brand new. Look, there's nothing wrong with practice, but you can't judge how good of a coach you're going to be when you're doing it for free. People are not, and you can't judge how good of a coach you are when you're doing nothing but working with friends and family. That's a totally different relationship. You've got to get out there and stand in this sort of persona of being a health coach for real and standing tall in the value of what it is you bring to the table. And you will probably underprice yourself in the beginning, but you have to price yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've noticed it with every single client when I either wasn't charging enough or this happens all the time too. And I let friends and family drag me into giving them advice. And then I just don't charge them because I'm like, well, not that it's a full package, right? But, they have some questions about something and, I enjoy talking to them anyway. I love them. They're my friends and family, but the percentage of time they actually put into practice what it was we talked about is much smaller.
Yep.
It just is. So for coaches listening, you're doing your clients a favor in pricing yourself, first of all, high enough that you're invested, right? They're paying you enough that you feel extraordinarily committed to that relationship. And so is your client.
Yeah.
It goes both ways.
It absolutely do. I mean, at the end of the day, money is just a value exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not equivalent to what you're putting into it and what they're putting into it, then the results aren't going to show up. And if the results don't show up, then you find your business in this situation where you're like, yeah, I'm a health coach. Most of my clients aren't actually doing anything I'm recommending to them. And I might have one or two outliers. No, we want businesses where we become known as the place to go to get this thing solved. So we have to have clients who are committed and we have to be committed as well.
Love it. I love it. So where can folks find this calculator?
So I believe we made a little link just for y'all for Health Coach Radio. So it's just going to be rachealcook.com/HCR. And we'll go ahead and have a link set up to direct you directly to downloading that calculator. And like I said, it's a spreadsheet, it's a Google sheet, but I have got tutorials on there to walk you through how to plug the numbers in. You don't have to do the math. I put the formulas in to do the math for you. So please don't be like, I suck at math. Math scares me. No, this is like literally plugging in the numbers and it all formulates, it all populates and tells you what you need to do next.
Cool. So tell us also some ways that you work with people. So I know there's a lot, like tons of things on your website, but what is the typical ways that people can work with you?
Honestly, everything really goes to the CEO Collective, which is our annual group program where we help women entrepreneurs to scale up their business, whether they are a service-based business, a coaching business, a consulting business, a course business. We love working with women entrepreneurs who are ready to build a sustainable business overcome the entrepreneurial poverty and actually have that business and life that they wanted when they started.
Great. Really great. Love this
Love it.
conversation. Love this conversation. It's always good to talk business and make it feel aspirational and sensible, and also like the tangible, like I think this is great. This has been really great.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. I concur. Look, I just think people heading in this direction professionally on a percentage basis, there's not a big percentage of people that have ever done this before, started their own business in any way. They go into this business because they want to help people, and somehow feeling businessy, conflicts with that somehow. And it really shouldn't have to. Yeah. So this is, I think, the benefit of someone like you, someone that works with people to do this, to help them understand how these things have to work together synergistically in order for you to even be able to help people. If you can't be profitable, if you can't be successful, you're not helping as many people as you can. And so if you're really struggling with the nuts and the bolts on how to do this in a way without it sucking your soul, because we've seen that, right? People go into business for themselves because they love something, but they're so burnt out, they've lost all motivation to continue and abandon it. I want to see more of these women's businesses lasting more than 5 years.
Me
right.
too.
And I want to see these entrepreneurs making a wage that allows them to live their life. So thank you for the work you do. I think it's fantastic. So we should just send everybody to that one link that you gave us, right? rachealcook.com/HCR.
Yes.
Awesome.
Head over there, grab the calculator. Let me know how you like it. And I know y'all are both on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. That's probably my favorite place to connect with people. So if you get into it and you start plugging those numbers in and get some ahas or insights, please let me know. DM me over on Instagram at racheal.cook. And I'd love to continue the conversation there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Racheal. This was so fun.
Thank you both for having me, and thanks for the great conversation.
Got it.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.